Greetings, my scattered brothers and sisters in the Lord. I trust you know the Lord is with you wherever you find yourself scattered today, and that you know that his presence with you is more than enough for whatever you might face today. Well, we are in Mark chapter 11, and Jesus has just rode into Jerusalem on a donkey. He is symbolically demonstrating that he is the Messiah, the Son of David. And riding into Jerusalem on a donkey, he's fulfilling prophecy. He is in some ways imitating Solomon when Solomon was going to his coronation. And so Jesus is entering into Jerusalem to receive his kingdom, to receive God's kingdom, and to bring it about. And so the crowds recognize this, and they're running ahead, and they're shouting Hosanna, and they're giving Jesus a royal welcome into Jerusalem. And Jesus goes to the temple, and that's where we would expect him to go. It was anticipated that when the Messiah came, one of the first things the Messiah would do would be renew the temple, restore the temple, reform the temple. But there was some type of temple expectation. And again, Solomon, the son of David, was to build the temple. And so it was anticipated that the new son of David would have some type of temple rebuilding, restoration, renewal program. And so Jesus goes to the temple and he looks around and he leaves. And that's where we're going to pick it up. So it's Mark chapter 11, picking it up at verse 11. So 11:11. And Jesus entered Jerusalem and went into the temple. And when he had looked around at everything, as it was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. On the following day, when they came from Bethany, Jesus was hungry. And seeing in the distance a fig tree and leaf, he went to see if he could find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. And he said to it, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard it. Now this is interesting because it sounds like Jesus is, kind of hangry. He's hungry, he looks at the tree, it's got leaves, it's not the season for figs, but he's looking to see if there's anything to eat. Doesn't find any fruit on the tree, and so he says, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And we're just kind of puzzled and scratching our heads like, what's up with Jesus? This is not the Jesus that we think we know in terms of kind-hearted and good. And here Jesus is kind of cursing a fig tree. So that took place. Now look what happens next, verse 15. And they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he was teaching them and saying to them, "Is it not written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations'? But you have made it a den of robbers." And the chief priests and the scribes heard it and were seeking a way to destroy him, for they feared him, because all the crowd was astonished at his teaching. And when evening came, they went out of the city. As they passed by in the morning, they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. Now that's pretty interesting, that they come to the fig tree and there's no fruit. The fig tree is out of season and it is fruitless, just leafy. And Jesus says, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." Jesus goes to the temple, and he's even more frustrated with the temple than he was with the fig tree. And then they leave, and the next morning they realize the fig tree is withered. See, I think what Jesus is doing is he is using the fig tree as an object lesson. The fig tree is representative of the temple, that there was a lot of activity at the temple, just like there were a lot of leaves on the fig tree, but nothing to eat. There was no fruit. And so the temple has basically, it's out of season. And the temple is going to wither. It's going to, be destroyed. And so I think about what's going on at the temple. It says that Jesus, stopped all the buying and selling of the sacrifices and the money exchanges that were taking place. And that it was supposed to be a house of prayer, and instead they had made it a den of robbers. And so house of prayer, a place for connecting with God, a place for crying out to God, a place for hearing from God, a place to honor God. And instead, they had made it a den of robbers. In other words, robbers go to their den in order to hide out and prepare for the next robbery. So the temple had become a place not for getting right with God. It became a place to hide while you plan your next sins. Kind of a safety place for robbers instead of a reconciling place with God. And nobody's lives were being changed. They were just going out and able to continue kind of the same old lifestyle of robbery, if you will, and thinking that the temple protected them and enabled them to live a robber lifestyle. Instead, they were supposed to be seeking God and hearing from God and realigning life with God. That's what happens in prayer. And so, yeah, the temple was like that fig tree that wasn't producing any fruit, even though there was lots of leafy activity going on. And so, the temple is going to, be brought down. And Jesus is going to make a new temple. Now, what does that got to do with you and me? Well, when I think about this, I can't help but wonder, when King Jesus kind of rides into my life, what does King Jesus find? When King Jesus rides into my church, what does King Jesus find? Is there lots of activity, but no real connection with God? Am I using religion? Am I using Jesus just to facilitate my sin so that Jesus becomes the place where I'm safe to keep on sinning, so that my church becomes the place where I can kind of hide and hang out and get ready to go out and, do more robbery, sin more in the week? Or is it a place where I really have to get right with God? And again, that happens through prayer, through offering ourselves to God, through listening to God. So I guess that's my question for me, my question for you, for all of us, is how much like that fig tree are we? How much are we like that temple, to where we're not really connecting with God? We're just kind of using, I guess, God in order to facilitate our wrongdoing. Well, that's tough. But our prayer needs to be, King Jesus, come into our lives and show us where we need to change, and indeed change us. Well, have a great week. And may you welcome and honor King Jesus. And as you do so, I'm trusting that Jesus will transform you, transform me from being, fruitless, to where we actually become a people, a house of prayer, where we're being more and more realigned with God and God's ways. God bless.